Good evening and welcome to the National Press Club. I'm Barbara Cochran, the president of the National Press Club Journalism Institute. We're gathered here tonight to celebrate the life of someone who was, quite simply, a pillar of the National Press Club. Julie Schoo served on the staff of the Press Club for 33 years and was a critical player in making the club and its related Journalism Institute a force for good. Our speakers tonight will pay tribute to the many ways in which Julie left her mark on Washington's journalism community. And I'm so glad you're all here to join in remembering how she touched the lives of all of us. And we're also so very glad to have Julie's son and daughter and grandson here with us tonight. Carter Schoo and Gretchen Pickens and Julie's beloved grandchildren, Henry, who is here, and Elsa, who's at camp, I believe, have been in all our thoughts and prayers. Julie was executive director of the National Press Club Journalism Institute, so I worked with her very closely. I admired her ability and her versatility tremendously. She could orchestrate an elegant Fourth Estate dinner, produce a stimulating session on digital skills, or coordinate a fierce response to the latest assault on press freedom, all with equal style and ease. She also was a remarkable steward of the Institute's resources, helping to create a solid financial foundation that will ensure we can continue for many years to help journalists improve their skills and to defend the role of a free press in our global society. In the weeks since Julie's passing, I've spoken to so many people who remember not only these big things that Julie did for the Press Club, but also the many small acts of kindness that made her such a special person. One told how Julie introduced her to another Press Club member with similar interests, and that led to a warm friendship between the two. Another told how Julie had helped him decide where he should live when he moved to Washington. And for another, Julie was a mentor and almost a second mother. Her connections were vast and multi-layered. She knew the famous, but she always had time for those people who worked behind the scenes. Julie reminds me a bit of George Bailey, the character Jimmy Stewart played in It's a Wonderful Life, a person whose existence changed the lives of everyone around her for the better. You're not going to hear in detail about Julie's accomplishments and her legacy from some of those who knew her best. And afterward, we'll gather next door in the First Amendment Lounge for some fellowship and an opportunity to share your remembrances, because we have another microphone there as well. Our first speaker tonight is Andrea Edney, the 45th president of the National Press Club.
Thank you, Barbara. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all here this evening to honor Julie. Julie, as we all know, was a wonderful, gracious, generous, kind person. It was an honor and a privilege to call Julie a friend. Julie touched, we learned when Julie passed, something, it shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Almost every single person I ran into at the National Press Club had a story about how Julie had touched their life, how she had influenced them, how she had helped them, and how they had been a close friend of Julie's. And I just thought, what a wonderful thing, what a wonderful, special thing that this one person could have that impact on so many others. I know certainly for my part, I really felt honored and privileged to be able to call myself Julie's friend. She gave me such wonderful advice when I needed it, including when I was getting ready to have my baby in November and worrying about being able to get to the hospital on time and would we be ready. She told me the story of how when she was pregnant with her son Carter in northern Michigan, and there were snowdrifts that were 5 feet high. She was worried about getting there on a snowmobile, but in the end it was all right, and for me it would be as well, and it was. Her advice also shaped how I decided to approach my work-life balance as a new mother, as president of the National Press Club, with my maternity leave that my employer, Bloomberg, has graciously decided to extend. She and I had many conversations about that, and I really, really appreciated it. Julie had stories for everything, from the story of riding to a wedding in a car driven by John Roberts, who's now the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and her uncle, who was an early head of the NRA, and his views on marketing of the Second Amendment. She told us about her family in Venezuela, but her favorite stories were about her children and her grandchildren. She was so proud of you. She loved you so much. And it was so lovely to hear the warmth with which she described your stories. I don't want to go into all of the stories that I have heard about Julie because I think that there are more coming from many people. But I'm so glad that all of you can be here today. I know we all miss her very much, and it's really wonderful that we can gather here at the National Press Club and honor her memory. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm Bill McCarran. I'm Executive Director here at the Press Club. And it's so great to see everybody here today to celebrate the life of our friend and colleague, Julie Schoo. Hello to her family. I feel like I've gotten to know these guys pretty well over the last few weeks, and it's really been a pleasure. She did such a wonderful job of raising all of you and helping to raise the grandkids. So, the most precious gift any of us can give, other than our love, is our time. Julie Schoo worked at the Press Club and the Journalism Institute for 33 years. Figure 1/3 of our time is spent working. That's a huge, precious gift she gave us. We're grateful, of course, but why did she choose to stay with us and serve? Julie was bright and skillful in so many ways. She could have worked anywhere. In a few minutes, you'll hear from board members of the National Press Club Journalism Institute, where Julie served as executive director in recent years. One thing you are likely to observe is that Julie was well loved by the board. And that is a formula for success. That keeps people happy. In board meetings, board members did not see Julie with other staff. For those meetings of 2 hours or so once a month, it was just Julie with the members interacting as colleagues. Members thought of themselves as working with Julie then, and they were. But there are 150 or more other hours each month where Julie was not with board members. And for most of that time, she was with us, the staff of the National Press Club or the Institute, working with Crystal or the others Julie had hired over time at NPCJI, working with me or Georgetta in finance or Celia in HR or with the folks in events and banquets and AV and IT. She collaborated with Lindsay on PR issues. She knew the membership department well as she led it for 20 years. She knew the kitchen and the broadcast teams and the archives and had reasons to work with all of them. For her long career here, we naturally thought of her as part of the staff, and that is how she saw herself. There are 112 staff members between the club and the Journalism Institute. Many of them are here today. I would say all love Julie. Like Julie, they serve journalists and journalism and hope to make journalism stronger and more accessible to the world. Even if they are in the club's catering operation, they are supporting journalism. This mission is of growing importance in our society. Journalism is underappreciated and misunderstood, and the world could use many Julie Shoos to counterbalance that. As it stands, there are not many like her, and we were all extraordinarily lucky to have her for the time we did. She made the world a better place. Through her efforts, she made journalism better. Julie had a personal connection to every member of our staff. They knew her, and she could tell you a lot about them. She knew, for example, all my kids' names, ages, interests, and a little bit about their hopes and dreams. I think that was true of many of her friends and many on staff here, and probably on the board. And we all knew about her family as well. Julie was a leader at the Press Club, not just by her title or tenure here, but through her significant life experience and in the way she valued everybody and included people and listened. She was a leader of quiet dignity and of moral character. She was a leader through her well-chosen language and direct communication. She was a leader in the example she set for all of us, but especially for the younger women on the staff who she mentored. In recent weeks, I have noticed that when we are chasing a problem in a circle, trying to figure out what to do, some on the staff cause us to focus by saying, what would Julie do here? She had that effect. Sometimes with Julie, the way she did the work was equally important to the work she was doing. When you come in the morning and you find your colleague dug in at her desk, working hard to get a journalist out of prison, and when you come back at the end of the day and she's still at it, that is inspiring. That's how Julie was working right up to the end of her life. At the annual book fair, which attracted more than 100 authors, many of them journalists, and about 1,000 attendees, and took place here in this space and in the ballroom across the way, Julie viewed the event as a kind of a literary city with neighborhoods and avenues. So there would be a neighborhood for history and one for cookbooks and children's books. And in this way, she created an experience for everybody. One year, I remember she created a neighborhood for Ann Coulter and Rod Blagojevich. And she gave them plenty of space in their neighborhood. The last table at the book fair was for the Seed School, which is something Julie brought to all our attention and which does a great job helping disadvantaged students succeed. As you approach the table, a Seed student would tell you about a book on the table and why they wanted to have it for their new library. You could buy the book, and then it was kept at the register for the school. Last year, I saw the students here, but did not see a table and asked why. And they said they had a good library now. But they came back because they liked the event and wanted to support Julie. This was the effect Julie had on people. One of the things staff really appreciated about Julie, and her friends too, I'm sure, was her skill as a storyteller. She would use that to bring you close and to share her world with you. Here was one she told me recently about the cat. The fact is, Julie loved animals, but was indifferent to the cat, Hannah. She loved her family, the press club, her dog, or a good book, or the movies, or gardening, or shopping. But the cat was regularly delivering small bunnies or birds to the kitchen at just the time Julie was cooking or getting ready for guests. It was unwelcome. In March of this year, we had tremendous windstorms over 80 miles per hour. Schools were closed. Julie and I shared a microclimate in Chevy Chase, and we would discuss weather and homeownership issues while riding the metro together. This day, she was asking me about wheelbarrows and would an 80-mile-an-hour wind pick one up. We agreed it would be better to set it down on its edge with the wheels in the air so the wind could not get under it. She made the yard ready for the incoming gale. At dusk, Julie could not find the cat. She looked everywhere, called for her, set out a saucer of milk. No dice, no cat. She went to bed. That night, the wind was whipping the trees, and she heard a noise at her window. She got up to find the cat looking like an astronaut in zero gravitational training. She opened the window to let her in. The cat moved several steps back. Julie put her head, shoulders, and extended arms through the window, called for the cat. She was, for the moment, Kate Winslet from the Titanic. Either because of the wind or on purpose, the cat moved back again, closer to the edge of the roof and away from the window and Julie's outstretched arms. For instances like this, Julie had at her command a special vocabulary that I believe is issued by the United States Navy for sailors on shore leave. She used it at this time in the best combinations and with good emphasis. The cat was unmoved. Julie was now crawling on her hands and knees across the roof toward the cat. The wind was now like something out of King Lear. Julie imagined the headline, "Crazy Maryland Cat Lady Found in Tree." As a big gust blew up, Julie became like the wheelbarrow flattened to the roof. The cat did an involuntary 360 on the gutter, eyes the size of the saucer in the kitchen. When the wind paused and gathered for another blow, Julie army crawled back to her window and quickly pulled it closed behind her. The cat would have to manage on its own. The next morning, there was the cat next to an empty saucer. The truth is, she was not wild about the cat, but was happy to see her there and noticed the wheelbarrow was still in its place in the yard. What does the story tell us about Julie? That she would climb out on a windy roof to retrieve a cat she does not like? That she had a strong sense of what is right? That she loved an underdog, undercat? That she is not afraid to laugh at herself? Stories like this Julie would share with us at the club, at lunch, or in the hall, or any good time. For me, on the metro, right after I came to work here at the club, we were waiting for the metro. When the cars pulled up, Julie said, "This is me, I'm friendship." And for years thereafter, she was. Thank you. We're going to have Kathy Kiley, Press Freedom Fellow.
You know, I came in from out of town today, and it's the first time that I've walked into the press club without seeing Julie Schoo's smiling face. So it's good to see yours. Julie Schoo was a collector and connoisseur of life's finer things. That includes people. So I want you to take a look around this room. Admire the Julie Schoo collection. Compliment yourself on making the cut. Just as she did with those antiques, she scoured catalogs and auction houses and trekked out to Virginia to find. Julie curated, cherished, and took care of us. She found ways to show us off, to group us so that each of us looked a little more special. When we needed it, she feather dusted us and made us shine again. Julie was never a reporter, but there was something about the way she ferreted out talent, synthesized it for maximum impact, and chose the right lead for every project that I think made her one of us. And if there were a Pulitzer Prize for friendship, Julie Schoo would own it. Her life was devoted to helping reporters, and its last act embodied the kinship she felt for us. As executive director of the Press Club's Journalism Institute, Julie made it her mission to train journalists to succeed in a changing environment and to protect them in an increasingly dangerous one. Julie spent her formative years overseas. She was close to her cousins in Venezuela. Both of those things gave her a keen appreciation of American ideals. Ideals are important to have, even if we don't always live up to them. Julie and I kept a list of people we called Friends of Freedom of the Press. One day last spring, one of them, Lynette Clementson, emailed us to say she and her board were awarding a Knight Wallace Journalism Fellowship to this club's jailed press freedom winner, Emilio Gutierrez Soto. Julie, who worked so hard to make this happen, called me to say, "I'm crying right now." More than some people, she understood what really makes America great: her generosity to the vulnerable and her commitment to a free press. Sadly, Those qualities are not in the ascendant right now. At the time of Julie's death, all of the foreign journalists honored during the past 3 years with this club's John Aubuchon Press Freedom Award were in jail. They are still in jail. Photojournalist Shah Khan faces a death sentence in Egypt. Reuters muckrakers Wallone and Chao So-u are falsely accused of espionage in Myanmar, and Emilio remains in immigration detention right here in the USA. Sometimes it seems as if there's a world war against free speech, and for the first time, our country is on the wrong side. Julie felt this keenly. I know, because we had long talks about it, but she never gave up hope. Right now, some of us are planning a fall summit here at the Press Club for news reporters and editors and for newsmakers to be refereed by the National Institute of Civil Discourse. Julie wanted to make a constructive effort to defuse the mistrust and malice that threatens our democracy. She recruited the team behind this event, and she raised the money to make it happen. And when it takes place, I will feel her spirit there, feather dusting those American ideals and making them shine again. A couple of months ago, something happened to me that has helped me understand what I'm feeling now. Maybe it will help you too. I was out for a walk when I stumbled. Going down, I stuck out my right arm, Heisman Trophy-like, to protect my noggin. When I got up, my wrist really hurt. I ended up at one of those walk-in medical centers to see if it was broken. Several x-rays later, the verdict came back: just a bad sprain. This was a relief until a friend told me, you know, a sprain takes longer to heal than a break. She was right. Even now, when I turn my wrist a certain way, it reminds me that connective tissue is important and hard to regenerate. Julie Schoo was our connective tissue. Now we have to recruit new muscles and tendons to compensate for the loss. As Rob Stoddard told the Journalism Institute board right after Julie died, we'll have to strive very hard in her absence and definitely in her memory to keep our work alive and on track. We will. We are not broken, but we will be hurting for a long time. So long, Julie Schoo, best friend of the Free Press. Thank you for making us all part of your magnificent collection.
Hi, I'm Peggy Engel, a journalist and longtime friend of Julie's. As you know, Julie collected friends effortlessly. People were attracted to her kindness, her intelligence, and her optimism. There were her elegant friends from Virginia and her early years in Washington who knew all about art and antiques. Her worldly friends who knew about her childhood overseas in India, an exotic upbringing that including having snake charmers at birthday parties. There were her more rambunctious friends from journalism, her neighbors who adored her and were frequent dinner guests in her beautiful home that she decorated with such style, her friends from church, her professional friends throughout Washington, her many, many girlfriends, of which I was so happy to be one. Like everyone here, I admired how she was a sea of calm and competence. I treasured her wise, good judgment, Her usual reaction to whatever outrage was happening in the world wasn't a rant, but a simple tilt of the head and a raised eyebrow, and usually a laugh. But I have the surprising news that Julie wasn't perfect. As anyone who went to the movies with her knew, she couldn't stand sitting next to people who were chowing down on popcorn and other food. She would choose seats in the very last row in the hopes of gaining some distance from the overenthusiastic eaters who ruined the movie experience for her. I thought this was just a rare eccentricity, and then 4 days after Julie died, I was reading a random health story, and it detailed the fact that this was a genuine malady. It's a condition called misophonia, where the sounds of other people eating are highly disturbing. Oh, Julie would have loved to have known that this was a scientific fact and not just a crazy phobia that she kept apologizing for. It's just one of the dozens of things I've wanted to share with her since she was taken from us way too soon. We all feel that loss because Julie was such a confidant and support to so many of us. She was a world-class connector. How many times did we get calls, and I know many of you got these, and she would say, "Have I told you about my friend, fill in the blank? You know, he or she is doing the most important project, and you really should know about it. You like her." And she was always right, and she was always a supporter and a connector. She was such an enthusiast about her friends' causes and achievements. We all benefited from her celebrating others. But she was way too modest about her own achievements and talents. She never wanted attention or fuss made over her, even when it was 100% necessary. Once, she brushed off the fact that she had twisted her foot while walking from home to the metro one morning. And I had randomly just dropped in on her at the press club at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I viewed this hugely swollen ankle, and I had to practically drag her into my car to go to the hospital. When the doctor appeared with the x-rays showing a serious break that took crutches and weeks of rehab, he was incredulous. "You walked on this for 8 hours, he told her. She just shrugged and smiled her sweet Julie smile. This beautiful woman also was the ultimate low-maintenance individual. Her priorities were her children, Carter and Gretchen, her cousin Elsa, her grandchildren Elsa and Henry, her friends, her colleagues, and her pets. Most recently, Hannah the cat, who I think she really did like, and the recently departed Max the terrier. All were her beloveds, and she cared passionately about their welfare and happiness. She truly yearned for peace in our fractured world. Months ago, we watched the trailer for the Mr. Rogers documentary, and we both teared up just over the trailer. We're definitely seeing that, she told me. And it was crushing to have to see it last week without her. She and Fred Rogers were really two of a kind, always seeing the good in others and insisting on positive forward motion. I prefer to think that they've met in the cosmos. She's a kindred soul who improved her world, leaving us with gratitude and joy for having been in her orbit. We were the lucky ones, and we will remember her always. Thank you.
My name is Rob Stoddard, and as a communicator member of the club, oh, that's not good for the camera, is it? Sorry. As a communicator member of the club, I was privileged to serve on the board of the Journalism Institute with Julie, or to be more precise, I worked for Julie, because we all worked for Julie, of course. And neither my tenure as an NPC member nor my engagement in the club has been as deep and as profound as have been many of yours. So as history goes, I was a relative newbie in the Julie Schoo fan club, yet I was, and continue to be, a passionate fan nonetheless. Julie embraced me when I joined the Institute board about 6 years ago. She instantly plunged me into Institute affairs, events, developments, fundraising, strategic planning, building relationships. Even at this moment, Bill, I'm thinking of ways we can raise more money with a t-shirt that says WWJD, what would Julie do? Maybe with a cat on the back, who knows? But there was no going halfway in working with Julie. She immersed herself in her mission, and you simply wanted to do the same. And of course, when she turned those beautiful eyes on you, you just couldn't say no. When I joined the Institute board, Julie helped me instantly feel part of the family. And I loved her for that, whether in a boardroom setting, at a social event, over lunch at the Fourth Estate with that salmon salad, of course, or in the midst of the many large and small programs that she planned and staged here. She always paused to connect, to make you feel special and recognized, as we've heard from many of our colleagues this evening already. That was part of the Julie magic, and she left indelible marks on so many of us, I think, through her friendship, leadership, loyalty, mentoring, and love. As we've heard so far tonight, Julie's legacy here at the Press Club has been immense and multifaceted. Arguably, though, perhaps her most enduring act, one that will touch many generations of Press Club members and Institute boards, was her leadership in the sale at auction of the Rockwell masterpiece, Norman Rockwell Visits a Country Editor. Now, you may already know the lead to this story. A seemingly obscure Rockwell masterpiece, donated to the club under somewhat mysterious circumstances a half-century previous, sells at a Christie's auction for more than $10 million, generating an unexpected windfall of revenue to benefit the National Press Club and its Journalism Institute. And you may have heard the story recounted, as Barbara did so eloquently at Julie's memorial service recently, and which is now part of our folklore here at the club. A larger-than-life work of art by an American master portraying an early 20th century community newspaper office in the heartland hangs for years on a dimly lit wall, just on the other side of a bar for reporters, no less, unprotected, rarely noticed, and literally just hanging on the wall. An astute staffer who at one time managed the club's library and who becomes accountable for the operation of its prestigious Journalism Institute, along with its many assets, such as artwork and historic keepsakes, notes that the value of the life body of work of this American master has begun to skyrocket in the art world. And she begins to wonder aloud, first, about what the actual value of the donated piece of art might be, and secondly, whether we shouldn't be a little more careful about just leaving it hanging on the wall. A lengthy investigation determines that, yes, there may be literally millions of dollars hanging on that nail, that adequately insuring that piece of property could bankrupt the Institute, and securely protecting it could require additional and substantial investment in a major construction project. And that we have been literally living by the grace of God, that the painting hasn't walked away on its own at some point over the years. Well, acknowledging those great challenges, as it turned out, was only the first step in solving the extraordinary and intricate problem of what to do with our Rockwell. The ensuing months brought a beehive of activity that indeed produced pure honey for the club and the Institute. There were many heroes of the tale, many in this room tonight, Press Club presidents past and then current, key members of the Board of Governors, the leaders and several crucial members of the Institute board, and of course, the management and staff of the club. But there was no question, disposition of the Rockwell, while elevating its prominence and its role in club history, and deriving the appropriate benefit for the Press Club and its Institute, was Julie's project, and she doggedly stuck with it, seeing it through to its mythic conclusion. It required the coordination of teams of lawyers, accountants, assessors, museum curators, art dealers, public relations executives, and yes, even journalists. It demanded full and hard-won collaboration between the Board of Governors and the Institute Board. It forced a large group of us to make immensely challenging decisions about how, under what conditions, in what form, and with what dealer to authorize the sale of this American masterpiece. And it called for the swift development of plans on both the Press Club and Journalism Institute sides for how the proceeds could be managed and invested in order to realize the best possible outcome for both of our entities. Amid this whirlwind of activity stood Julie, diligently, calmly, masterfully, and optimistically keeping all the threads moving, monitoring the progress of each working group and task force, and even as some of us feared the plan might collapse of its own weight, keeping her eye on the prize and working on deadline to complete this story. When Christie's opened its American art sale at its splendid headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, across from Rockefeller Plaza in November of 2015, Norman Rockwell Visits a Country Editor was the featured and central piece of the more than 100 works of art auctioned on the 19th day of that month. Some of you were present at the thrilling auction that day, or you watched it remotely here at the club or online. And I will never forget standing with my wife, Barbara, before the piece in Christie's Premier Gallery on the night that it was introduced to the public, before huge crowds of art appreciators and speculators. The hair still stands up on the back of my neck as I remember that moment and all that it stood for. 2.5 years later, the assets from the painting's sale, the fruits of Julie's intensive labor, are long since collected and now very meticulously invested. And they represent a substantial and material hedge against any business or financial headwinds that we might encounter at the club or at the Institute in the years ahead, thus assuring that this hallowed place continues to be a nurturing home to the nation's finest journalists, the cradle of American journalism, the defender of free speech, and a principal advocate for our First Amendment. Here are just a couple of items of which you may not be aware. So to Julie, the ultimate disposition of the Rockwell was not just about this miraculous and long overlooked gift to secure the future of the club and the Journalism Institute, and to aid in the training of new generations of journalists, all critical objectives. But it was also about sustaining the Norman Rockwell legacy. That encouraged Julie to complete arduous arrangements to loan the work for a period of time to the Norman Rockwell Museum in Massachusetts, where it was in fact prominently displayed, and to which it surprisingly returned for a while after the sale. And, most importantly, Julie commissioned a precise replica of the work so that its presence and the spirit of Rockwell himself could remain here at the club, a vivid reminder of its impact on our lives and work. So the next time you toast with a friend or colleague in the lounge, or finish a great meal at the Reliable Source, be sure to pause at the top of that staircase before returning home or to work, and take in again that vivid and contemplated representation of our profession's presence and impact on America. And please, think of Julie, who gave so much of her final years on this earth to honor an American icon and to preserve and enhance the heritage and culture of this great institution.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Lewis. I serve as treasurer of the Institute, and I've had the privilege of knowing Julie for most of her 33 years here at the club. I won't tell you how old I am, but you can guess. As you've heard, Julie was considered a very special person. She was beloved and admired by a lot of people, as you can see. From spearheading press freedom initiatives, designing training programs for journalists, or organizing fundraisers, she demonstrated leadership and commitment. Now, a little backstory on the Rockwell. So as treasurer, we would go over the budget quite often. We noticed that our expenses for insurance kept going up and up and up. So what's this about? So we had, she had the good foresight to have some of the artwork appraised. We didn't know the asset we were sitting on, but it was because of one of our lunches over budget. Say, this has got to be an anomaly here. So that's how it happened, just as a budget issue. So, and the rest is history, as they say. In addition to my role as treasurer, Julia and I worked together on the Institute's golf tournament. And those on the board know what I'm talking about. Even though she knew little about golf, let alone putting together a tournament, she jumped right in and made it a success. We started out small, true, but today we're in our 6th year and it continues to grow. I think the 4th estate dinner was also one of her creations. That now averages about $50,000 a year. So here's a situation where several years ago, Julie thought it would be a good idea if we had an outside firm analyze our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, a SWOT analysis. So I managed to find that over the weekend. And I realized that one of the major weaknesses we had was a difficulty in raising money because our universe of donors was so small. Well, that wasn't really news. We knew we had problems trying to raise money. We were trying to make ends meet. And we were always trying to borrow money from other sources. So again, the board members know what I'm talking about. But as you've heard, Julie solved that problem with the income from the 4th Estate dinner, from the Rockwell painting, as well as other income streams. But if you look at the untapped opportunities that were cited at the time, they are a tribute to some of Julie's accomplishments that go unnoticed. Modernizing the look, feel, and function of the library and Bloomberg Room, expanding the board's role in fundraising and programming, streamlining our activities to focus on outcomes, enlarging our programming related to press freedom, and targeting younger audiences. Julie turned all these opportunities into strengths, and in doing so, she made us a more relevant organization. Those of us on the board know she had a special love of young people. Since I'm the last speaker, I have an obligation to make news. So tonight, we are announcing that a scholarship will be established in Julie's honor, aimed at students who want to pursue careers in journalism. We will announce the details later, but that's our way of saying she will always be remembered, she will always be in our hearts, and she will always give forward to the next generation of journalists.
I can see that is a very popular idea among you all, and I'm so glad about that. Thank you, Ed, and to all of you who did such a wonderful job of paying tribute to our dear friend. And I think at times like these, it's so important to be able to gather together to share tears and laughter, and we've had both of those this evening. I also want to say thank you to the Board of Governors of the National Press Club, to the Board of Directors of the Journalism Institute, and also a very special thanks to the staff of the club and the Institute for all you've done over these past few weeks to help us to to begin to carry on as Julie would have wanted us to do. I do love that WWJD idea. Tonight's celebration would not have been possible without your thoughtfulness and hard work, and we're all very appreciative of what you have all done. And now it's time for us to carry this celebration on a more personal level. So I invite you all to join us next door in the First Amendment Lounge for a reception. There is a book there, a guest book that I invite you to sign and write some of your thoughts, and that book will be given to the family. And also, there's a microphone there, and so we can continue the tributes and the remembrances of our dear, dear friend. Thank you very much.